You think he's your friend. He laughs at your jokes, includes you in his plans, acts supportive when others are watching. But underneath the surface of his manufactured camaraderie, something darker is operating. Something he'll never admit. Something he might not even recognise in himself. Something that transforms every one of your victories into his personal defeat. He's not celebrating your success. He's calculating how it diminishes his own value. He's not admiring your progress. He's measuring how far you've pulled ahead of him in the brutal mathematics of male hierarchy. He's not your ally in the game of life. He's your competitor wearing the mask of friendship. Today, I'm going to expose the 7 hidden signs that reveal when men are consumed by jealousy toward you. These aren't obvious displays of hostility. They're sophisticated psychological warfare tactics designed to protect their ego while undermining your position. They're the invisible weapons of men who can't handle being outranked by someone they believed was their equal. Welcome to the uncomfortable truth about male friendship. It's always conditional, always comparative, and always one promotion away from turning into psychological sabotage. Every group of men operates according to an invisible ranking system that determines social value, resource access, and mating opportunities. This hierarchy isn't officially discussed, rarely acknowledged openly, and never formally established, but it governs every interaction, every conversation, every moment of male social dynamics with the precision of a military chain of command. Men don't just exist in social groups, they exist in social pyramids where everyone knows exactly where they stand relative to everyone else. The man at the top gets deference, attention, first choice of opportunities, and automatic respect. The men below him accept their positions as long as the ranking seems fair, stable, and based on legitimate superiority. But hierarchies aren't permanent structures. They're dynamic systems constantly being challenged, defended, and rearranged through competition that operates largely beneath conscious awareness. When you suddenly ascend in status, you don't just change your own position, you force every man below your new level to recalculate his entire understanding of the social order. This recalculation creates psychological crisis for men who built their identity around believing they were superior to you. Your success doesn't just represent your advancement, it represents their demotion. Your victory doesn't just add to your score, it subtracts from their sense of self-worth. Your progress doesn't just move you forward, it pushes them backward in the only game that matters to male psychology, the competition for social dominance. The jealousy that emerges from this hierarchical disruption isn't personal, it's biological. You've triggered ancient survival programming that equates lower status with reduced access to resources, respect, and reproductive opportunities. Their brain treats your success as an existential threat to their genetic future. When you achieve something significant, a promotion, a relationship upgrade, a personal breakthrough, watch carefully how the men in your orbit respond. The ones who genuinely support your success will celebrate immediately and authentically. The ones consumed by jealousy will implement the most sophisticated form of psychological punishment known to male social dynamics: strategic silence. This isn't obvious hostility that you could confront directly. It's the calculated withdrawal of emotional support disguised as busy schedules, personal problems, or natural communication gaps. They don't attack your achievement, they simply refuse to acknowledge it exists. The silent treatment works as social punishment because male friendships are built on mutual recognition and validation. When that recognition gets strategically withdrawn after your moment of triumph, your brain interprets it as rejection from the tribe. The achievement that should have brought you closer to your social circle instead creates distance that feels like punishment for succeeding. This silence serves multiple psychological functions for the jealous man. It protects his ego from having to publicly acknowledge your superiority. It punishes you for disrupting the comfortable hierarchy where he felt secure. It sends a message to other group members that your success shouldn't be celebrated too enthusiastically. It maintains his psychological comfort by treating your achievement as temporary aberration rather than permanent elevation. The most insidious aspect of strategic silence is its deniability. When confronted, he can claim he was busy, distracted, dealing with his own issues, anything except the truth that your success triggered his deep insecurity about his own relative status. Men who deploy strategic silence after your victories are revealing that they never viewed your relationship as genuine friendship. They viewed it as temporary alliance with someone they believed was permanently positioned below them in the social hierarchy. Your success proves that assumption wrong, and their silence is their psychological defense against that uncomfortable revelation. In the brutal economics of male social competition, nothing matters more than female attention. Every display of wealth, every demonstration of power, every exhibition of physical fitness, every symbol of success, they all serve the same ultimate function, attracting women who represent genetic opportunity and social validation. When you naturally attract female interest without the elaborate performance rituals that other men require, you become a walking threat to their entire strategy for romantic success. You represent proof that their approach, the expensive cars, the gym obsession, the wealth displays, the personality performances, might be unnecessary theatre that women see through instantly. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance in men who have invested enormous time, money, and energy into becoming attractive to women through artificial enhancement. Your effortless success invalidates their effortful struggle. Your authentic magnetism exposes their manufactured appeal. Your natural confidence highlights their performed confidence. The jealousy that emerges from this dynamic isn't just about romantic competition, it's about worldview destruction. These men built their identity around the belief that female attention must be earned through specific achievements, purchased through financial success, or constructed through personality modification. You represent evidence that their entire approach to relationships is based on fundamental misunderstanding of female psychology. This threat assessment operates automatically and below conscious awareness. They don't consciously decide to resent your romantic success. Their brain categorizes you as a competitor who possesses unfair advantages in the mating marketplace. Your ease with women becomes their evidence that life is rigged against them. The men most threatened by your natural appeal with women are those who have turned dating into full-time jobs, requiring constant strategic thinking, performance management and resource investment. They can't accept that authenticity might be more attractive than artifice, because that acceptance would require admitting that years of their effort were misdirected. When a man recognizes that you possess qualities he lacks but desperately wants, he'll often attempt to acquire those qualities through imitation rather than internal development. This creates the bizarre phenomenon of grown men studying other men like instruction manuals for becoming more attractive versions of themselves. This copying behaviour reveals itself through sudden changes in his speech patterns, clothing choices, social behaviour, or lifestyle decisions that mysteriously align with your successful approach. He becomes a human photocopy machine, attempting to reproduce your results by reproducing your methods without understanding the authentic foundation that makes those methods effective. The copying attempts always fail because they're based on surface-level observation rather than deep-level understanding. He sees your confidence, but not the self-acceptance that creates it. He notices your communication style, but not the genuine interest in others that powers it. He observes your leadership, but not the secure identity that enables it. He studies your success, but not the authentic character that generated it. This imitation game becomes psychologically exhausting for him, because he's constantly performing a version of himself that doesn't align with his actual personality. The copied behaviours feel forced, unnatural, calculated, exactly the opposite of the authentic presence that made you attractive in the first place. The men who attempt to steal your identity through imitation are inadvertently confessing that they view you as superior in fundamental ways they can't achieve through their own development. Instead of doing the internal work to become genuinely attractive, they're trying to wear your attractiveness like borrowed clothes that never fit properly. This copying behaviour also serves as psychological research. By studying your methods and attempting to replicate your results, they're trying to decode what makes you successful, so they can either match your effectiveness or identify weaknesses they can exploit. When direct competition becomes impossible, because your advantages are too obvious to deny, jealous men will deploy a more sophisticated strategy, attempting to diminish your threat by categorizing you in ways that make your success seem less impressive or less relevant to overall social ranking. This categorical imprisonment manifests through strategic labeling that acknowledges your strength while simultaneously limiting its scope. If you're successful with women, you become the guy who only cares about dating, rather than someone with broad social intelligence. If you're intellectually gifted, you become the nerd who thinks too much, rather than someone with valuable analytical abilities. If you're physically impressive, you become the gym rat who compensates with muscles, rather than someone with discipline and self-care skills. These labels serve multiple psychological functions for the jealous man. They allow him to acknowledge your superiority in specific areas, while maintaining his belief that he's superior overall. They create artificial boundaries around your success that prevent it from threatening his position in other domains. They provide comfortable explanations for why you're ahead in some areas, while he remains competitive in others. The categorization strategy also serves as social manipulation designed to influence how others perceive your achievements. By consistently framing your successes within narrow categories, he's attempting to prevent other people from recognizing the full scope of your capabilities or the legitimate threat you represent to the established hierarchy. Men who deploy categorical imprisonment are revealing their inability to accept that you might be genuinely superior across multiple dimensions of attractiveness, success, or social value. The labels they create are psychological protection mechanisms that allow them to maintain their self-image while acknowledging undeniable evidence of your advancement. This strategy becomes particularly obvious when they treat your success as luck, circumstance, or specialized advantage rather than earned achievement that reflects your superior character, intelligence, or effort. When jealous men find themselves in social situations that include women, their behavior undergoes dramatic transformation designed to compete for attention they assume will naturally gravitate toward you. This performance amplification reveals itself through exaggerated displays of humor, intelligence, success, or personality traits that seem calculated to outshine rather than complement the social dynamic. This competitive performance creates an uncomfortable social atmosphere where natural conversation gets replaced by desperate attempts to dominate attention through louder stories, more dramatic gestures, more aggressive humor, or more obvious displays of knowledge, wealth, or accomplishment. The performance amplification operates from scarcity thinking that treats social attention like finite resource that must be hoarded rather than abundant resource that can be shared. These men believe that attention you receive automatically reduces attention available to them, creating zero-sum competition where your social success requires their social failure. This behavior becomes particularly obvious in group settings, where they transform from relaxed participants into attention-seeking performers the moment women enter the environment. The shift is so dramatic that it feels like watching someone put on costume and begin acting in play designed to prove their social value. The men who engage in performance amplification are unconsciously confessing that they don't believe their natural personality is competitive with your natural presence. Instead of developing authentic confidence, they're creating theatrical confidence that requires constant energy to maintain and always feels forced to observers. This performative competition also reveals their fundamental misunderstanding of female psychology. They assume women are impressed by the loudest, most dramatic, most attention-seeking man in the room, when research consistently shows that women are more attracted to authentic confidence than performed confidence. One of the most revealing signs of male jealousy is the dramatic shift in behavior that occurs when the social context changes from male-only environments to mixed-gender situations. Men who seem supportive, friendly, or neutral when women aren't present often become subtly hostile, competitive, or undermining when female observers enter the social dynamic. This context-switching behavior reveals that their friendliness was conditional on maintaining social situations where your superior status wouldn't be observed or validated by the people whose opinions matter most in the hierarchy of attraction: women. The hostility manifests through interruption patterns, contradiction reflexes, storytelling that positions you negatively, passive-aggressive commentary, or subtle sabotage designed to lower your status in female eyes. These behaviors are carefully calibrated to appear natural rather than obviously competitive, but the timing of their deployment makes their strategic purpose obvious. This context-dependent hostility serves multiple functions for the jealous man. It attempts to neutralize your natural advantages by creating social friction that makes you seem less attractive. It establishes him as competitor rather than supporter in situations where female validation is available. It demonstrates to women that you're not universally respected or liked by other men. The most sophisticated practitioners of context-switching hostility maintain plausible deniability by framing their undermining behaviour as friendly teasing, honest feedback, or helpful correction rather than obvious competition. They've learned to weaponize normal social interaction patterns to create subtle damage to your reputation. Men who deploy context-dependent hostility are revealing that they view every mixed gender social situation as battlefield, where your success represents their defeat. They can't afford to be genuinely supportive because support would be tantamount to surrendering in the competition for female attention and social dominance. When men recognise that they can't compete with you in areas that actually matter, romantic success, career advancement, genuine social status, they often retreat into aggressive competition over meaningless details that allow them to experience temporary psychological victory. This desperation manifests through corrections of minor factual errors, debates over insignificant preferences, competitions over trivial knowledge, arguments about irrelevant details, or attempts to establish superiority in areas so narrow that winning them provides no actual social value. The trivial victory seeking serves as psychological medication for the pain of recognizing genuine inferiority in important domains. By winning small arguments, correcting minor mistakes, or demonstrating superior knowledge in irrelevant areas, they create artificial experiences of dominance that temporarily relieve the discomfort of being authentically outranked. This behaviour becomes particularly obvious when the energy they invest in trivial competitions seems disproportionate to the importance of what they're competing over. Men who can't stand to be wrong about anything, who turn casual conversations into debates, who need to win every minor disagreement are usually compensating for major losses in competitions that actually matter. The desperation behind trivial victory seeking reveals itself through the emotional intensity they bring to meaningless contests. Normal people can concede small points without psychological distress. Men consumed by jealousy treat every minor disagreement like existential threat to their already fragile sense of superiority. This syndrome also creates social awkwardness because observers recognise that the competition is artificial and the victories are meaningless. The man who needs to win trivial arguments ends up looking insecure rather than impressive, desperate rather than confident, small rather than superior. These 7 signs of male jealousy operate according to ancient biological programming that hasn't adapted to modern social reality. Your male competitors are responding to you with psychological mechanisms designed for tribal societies where status directly determined survival and reproductive success. In ancestral environments, being outranked by another male could mean exile from the group, loss of resource access, reduction in mating opportunities, and potential genetic extinction. The jealousy response evolved a survival mechanism designed to motivate competitive behaviour that could restore or protect social position. Modern society has largely eliminated the life or death consequences of social hierarchy, but the emotional programming remains unchanged. The men who respond to your success with jealousy are experiencing genuine biological distress that feels like existential threat even though the actual stakes are much lower. Understanding this evolutionary context doesn't excuse their behaviour, but it explains why their responses often seem disproportionate to the actual situation. They're not consciously choosing to be hostile or competitive. They're responding automatically to programming that interprets your success as threat to their fundamental survival interests. This biological reality also explains why logic rarely resolves male jealousy issues. You can't reason with evolutionary programming that operates below conscious awareness and triggers emotional responses faster than rational analysis can intervene. The men who successfully transcend jealousy programming are those who have developed sufficient self-awareness to recognise their biological responses and sufficient emotional security to choose different behavioural responses despite those feelings. When you learn to recognise these 7 signs of male jealousy, something fundamental shifts in how you navigate social relationships with other men. Instead of being confused by subtle hostility, you understand its source. Instead of being hurt by strategic silence, you recognise its purpose. Instead of being frustrated by competitive behaviour, you see its desperation. This recognition doesn't make you cynical about male friendship. It makes you selective about which men are capable of genuine friendship versus those who can only maintain alliance as long as they feel superior to you. The men worth maintaining relationships with are those who celebrate your success, support your advancement, and remain consistent regardless of your status changes. These men have developed sufficient internal security to view your victories as inspiration rather than threat, your progress as motivation rather than insult. The recognition of jealousy patterns also protects you from internalizing their psychological attacks. When you understand that their hostility reflects their insecurity rather than your character flaws, their attempts at undermining lose their emotional power over you. Most importantly, recognizing jealousy allows you to respond strategically rather than emotionally. Instead of fighting their competitive behavior, you can ignore it. Instead of being hurt by their silence, you can find better friends. Instead of trying to prove yourself to men who can't handle your success, you can invest energy in relationships with people secure enough to appreciate your achievements. If you're recognizing these jealousy patterns in the men around you and want to understand more about navigating complex social dynamics, subscribe to this channel for insights that will transform how you interpret every interaction in your life. Hit that notification bell because understanding human psychology at this level changes everything about how you build relationships, advance your career, and protect your emotional energy. The 7 signs I've revealed today aren't just diagnostic tools for identifying jealous men, they're liberation tools for freeing yourself from the psychological manipulation that insecure men use to maintain artificial superiority over genuinely superior competitors. When you recognize strategic silence, you stop waiting for validation from men who can't provide it. When you identify attention-seeking performance, you stop being impressed by artificial displays of confidence. When you see copying behavior, you appreciate that imitation is the sincerest form of confession that you possess something they desperately want. Understanding male jealousy also helps you avoid the trap of dimming your own light to make insecure men comfortable. The men who can't handle your success aren't friends worth keeping. The men who compete with your achievements aren't allies worth having. The men who feel threatened by your progress aren't partners worth considering. Your success will always trigger jealousy in men who built their identity around being superior to you. That's not your problem to solve. It's their psychological development to complete. Your job isn't to make them comfortable with your advancement. Your job is to continue advancing despite their discomfort. The most successful men understand that jealousy is inevitable, byproduct of achievement and social mobility. Instead of being surprised by competitive behavior from former equals, they expect it. Instead of being hurt by strategic hostility, they recognize it as confirmation that they're moving in the right direction. True strength isn't avoiding the jealousy of other men, it's continuing to grow despite their attempts to hold you back. True confidence isn't making insecure men comfortable, it's remaining secure while they struggle with their insecurity. True leadership isn't preventing competitive behavior, it's rising above it while others exhaust themselves trying to pull you down. The men who matter will celebrate your success. The men who don't matter will resent it. Learning the difference between these two groups is one of the most valuable social skills you can develop, and recognizing the 7 signs of jealousy is your roadmap to making that crucial distinction. Share this video with any man who needs to understand that not all friendship is genuine, not all support is authentic, and not all men can handle your success. The patterns I've revealed today will help you build relationships with people secure enough to appreciate your achievements rather than threatened enough to undermine them.